Well, welcome to day four, everyone. So glad to see so many of you dressed up and hoping to see more of you soon. As we get started for the day, just wanted to open it up for any kind of reflections that you've had on the last 3 days. Any questions that you might have. We've covered a lot of ground, given you a lot of information. Um, we've wanted to just make sure that we're making ourselves available to you all for any kind of clarification or additional guidance that you may need. So as always, feel free to utilize the chat right now or throughout the meeting to ask any questions that you might have or come off mute. Yeah, how's everyone doing apart from feeling festive?
Doing well. I'm wondering what Amy Altman is. I see Ginger.
When the Kansas girls get on, we're the Spice Girls. So I am ground ginger.
And I'm Dilly Spice.
I'm cinnamon.
And I'm nutmeg.
Oh, wow. You all
I
love
think
coordination.
we're in terms of coordination. Wow.
Not a problem.
That's great. Alrighty, well, so moving on, today is going to be all about bringing together all the pieces that we've been talking about over the last 3 days. So we're going to start today by a virtual site visit to learn more about just the producer's perspective of farm to school sales. So we're going to dig into the planning and outreach tools later on. And then of course, you'll have plenty of time to work with your state teams about planning, outreach, and then utilizing the ins and outs of the trainer action plan. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to Tammy to get us started with the virtual site visit.
How are you doing?
Hey there, everybody. It's so wonderful and just taking this training to a whole new level. I kind of want to do this on the other trainings, even though it's not even going to be Halloween. So as part of designing a peer-led and experiential training, we recommend that trainers include some kind of site visit to a local farm that's engaged in school sales. And this visit could also include like a regional distributor or some kind of food hub, or even a visit from the school food services director to, and have the producer and buyer engaged in talking about their relationship building. And these visits create an important opportunity for incorporating some kind of local context that we've been driving home this entire training, and also provide an opportunity for helping producers see how a farmer is applying the principles that we're trying to teach in the local producer trainings. So we also encourage trainers to customize the visit for your producer audience. So for example, if your producer audience is predominantly protein producers or meat producers, you might want to consider going to a ranch. Vice versa, if they're primarily crop producers, consider going to a specialty crop or crop farm. So today we have Gary Fair from Green School Farms, and he is a specialty crop producer. And one other thing I want to add about the site visit is we have the panel guidance on page 111 of the facilitator guide, but you might want to refer to those questions to help guide the questions and provide some kind of guidance. That's what we've done with Gary. And with that, I'm just gonna turn it over to Andrea. She's done biking, or maybe she can introduce Gary via her bike. And she's going to be also facilitating the site visit today.
Hey everyone, I don't know about you, but I can't take the smile off my face just looking at all y'all in your costumes. So I want to get a screenshot. If everyone could come on video get your costume all spruced up. Let's do a screenshot here. Oh, I see Deb went off. Deb, maybe you're getting yours. Oh, look at the pumpkin. And while we wait, Aubrey, what are you? Is that like a
Mine is an aspirational costume. I am a garden goddess, although my green thumb is kind of lacking. The
Okay,
passion's there,
nice.
but
Nice.
I've got a little pumpkin here.
Nice. Does anyone else have any questions about anyone else's costume? Oh, Lacey, you're a walrus. I see that. Okay, nice. Oh, the spices, too good. Oh, Deb, I see. Okay, great. Deb's all ready to go. All right. On the count of 3, everyone smile. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Oh, this is great. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks for hearing me, everyone. And I think I don't know, Tammy, will we do the voting like later on or?
Yeah, we are probably right before our 15-minute break.
Okay, perfect.
We'll do some voting.
Okay, well, thanks for letting me get that captured. Okay. Well, I wanted to just say thanks to Gary and thanks to everyone here for making it to our final day of the training. This costume thing I think is going to help me get through it for sure. And I think Gary, the visit and the words that we hear from Gary are also going to help us kind of let all of this sink in and see how it can actually look in practice. So I had the pleasure of meeting Gary actually earlier this year as part of the Nebraska Farm to School Institute. So this was an intensive training that we put together. The folks from Nebraska really put together for school teams to dig really deep into their farm to school programs and aspirations and create action plans. And Gary actually served on his school district's team as a partner in this institute, which I think kind of shows you his level of commitment to farm to school. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Gary, if you wouldn't mind doing a brief introduction about who you are and all about your farm. And while we do that, Tammy is going to show some pictures of Gary's farm, since obviously we all can't be there today. Then the way this is going to work is we'll show a brief video and then we'll do some question and answer with Gary. So Gary, thanks again for being here. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. I appreciate being invited to speak and for the team that's put all this together. So, hi everybody. My name is Gary Fair. I'm located near Lincoln, Nebraska. I have a small diversified vegetable farm, and I use organic practices. I'm not certified organic, but I hope to be at some point. That's in the plan. And I sell through various channels in the Lincoln area. So I do farmers markets, CSA, wholesale to different organizations like grocery stores, restaurants, schools. And the name of my farm was kind of a deliberate choice to represent my passion for farm to school. And so the name of my farm is Green School Farms, green signifying a relationship to a positive relationship to the environment, school, of course, being connections to schools, and farms representing the plural of farms, representing a desire to co-create a network of farms that can be an aggregate supplier to some of the schools in the area. So I guess, so Andrea, just cut me off if I'm starting to run long or talking too much. But the way I got started, I haven't been doing this my whole life. Most of my career was as a software engineer. And so I was pounding away at a keyboard for years and years. And at some point along the way, this has been a slow but gradual but deliberate transition. Some point years ago, I started to get a feel and an interest awakening about the importance of food and learning about, you know, where food comes from, why that's important, about how it's produced and where it comes from. And, you know, it was fun to attend farmers markets and do all that, and attend, you know, go on farm tours as a consumer. But somewhere along the line, it kind of awakened a desire in me that I realized I wanted to do something more than just kind of view things from the sidelines. And so I implemented just a plan, I guess, for myself of how I was going to transition away from a desk job and go into trying this full time. It was a lot harder than I thought and took a lot longer than I thought, but that's okay. You know, life doesn't guarantee quick wins. And finally, just this year, actually, in fact, I had gone down to a part-time job for a few years, but then finally this year, I felt that the finances were such that I could finally make that break. And so I cut the final purse strings to a regular paycheck. And so now I'm doing just the farm full time. And it was pretty scary, still is sometimes. But I knew it was the right decision. And every day I'm out there in the field, even on gloomy, rainy days like we've been having, I know it's the right decision for me. And I'm really excited, especially when I can partner with schools and get either students to come out and work on the farm, or for me to supply food to school cafeterias, that type of thing. So I guess that's it in a nutshell. I guess for the size of the operation, like I said, I have a small acreage. The total size of the farm is 20 acres, but only an acre or so of that is in production right now for vegetables. The remaining area is split between alfalfa production and then a restored prairie area, about 5 acres of restored prairie. And the balance of that is just in kind of like trees and other sort of odd shaped areas. I don't live out there yet. There were no buildings on the land when we bought it back in 2016. But I hope to build a house out there soon. And I'm in the process of getting a greenhouse put up for the first time instead of renting greenhouse space. So if I can fully get out to the farm at some point, that's going to really be a time savings in terms of not driving back and forth between a greenhouse and my house and the farm and whatnot. But I just, every year it gets a little more streamlined. I hopefully am getting a little bit better at doing some of the management of weeds and pests and increasing production. And I just really enjoy pretty much every aspect of it. So the last couple of years, I've taken on a part-time help. I call them an intern, but really it's a part-time person that helps me do some of the harvesting and run the farmers market. So things are slowly building up, and I'm just really grateful that for all the connections I've made, and I know a lot of the Nebraska team on here, and just really lean on them for ideas and support. And so I don't know, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Andrea, what have I not touched on?
Oh, that's good. Would you mind sharing maybe some of the products that you grow or specifically grew this year, let's say?
Yeah, sure. So normally, well, in the springtime, a big focus is on plant sales. So I do a lot of plant starts for home gardeners, so things like tomatoes and pepper plants, and that's really a big hit. And for that, I'll do 80 to 100 different varieties of herbs and vegetables for that. And then in the main season for growing, usually it's anywhere between 30 to 50 different types of vegetables. So it's things like, you know, all the things you find in a farmer's market, cucumbers, lettuce, kale, Brussels sprouts, watermelon, bell peppers. The screenshots are very helpful here because now I can see what I've grown. Potatoes, onions, celery, tomatoes. Yeah, things like that. Basil, dill, parsley. So like I said, pretty much anything, you know, all the common stuff you find at the farmer's market. We all find our niche. Every farm has to kind of, you know, specialize in things. And some of the things that have been a little more successful for me have been things that aren't too commonly grown around, at least in my area. So things like Brussels sprouts, celery, baby carrots, cherry tomato. Well, there are a lot of cherry tomatoes, but those are a popular seller. So yeah, those are some of the things I specialize in. And I think that covers it.
Yeah, we're going to dive into the logistics of Gary's connections with schools, but does anyone have any general questions about Gary's farm more broadly? That was a good overview. Okay, and now we're going to zip over to a brief video. Now, Gary kindly recorded this video for the Nebraska Farm to School Institute. So you'll hear that it was filmed in May. So it's a little bit different of a time of year, and it mentions kind of the Institute. So just ignore that and listen to the sage advice that Gary shares about getting started with Farm to School.
Y'all see that okay?
Welcome to the Institute. My name is Gary Fair. Name of my farm is Green School Farms. I'm out here obviously standing in the field. Got some rows of potatoes behind me, and everything's starting to really come on now. So in not too long, we're gonna have lots of good potatoes and other good stuff. I wanted to take a few minutes today and give my perspective as a farmer and give you a little bit of background about Green School Farms. And so I guess I'll start with that first. I deliberately chose the name Green School Farms because it reflects one of my core interests and focus on getting healthy food into schools, school cafeterias, and also providing opportunities to educate staff and students about the importance of where food comes from, how it's produced, and the connection between the health of our bodies and our communities and our local economies with sustainably raised food. Everything I do here is organic. I'm not certified organic, but I use organic practices, so no synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, that type of thing. And I have been in, this is my 7th year of growing. I actually started, most of my career was actually started in software industry. So I was a software engineer most of my life. And at some point started a gradual but deliberate transition into farming because I started to get a conviction about the importance of how food ties to the aspects I mentioned about our health, our communities, our environment. And so that's kind of what drives me. I have been active in local food, or I should say farm to school in the Lincoln area for a number of years. And I work with some local area schools, including Pius X, which is one of the Pius X, which is one of the schools in the Pilot Institute this year. So excited to be working with them on that project. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my perspective as a farmer, as a producer, and how just give 3 steps or tips or suggestions for how schools who are interested in getting into this can get started. And so just some 3 simple steps that we'll cover. And I guess the first thing I'd say is, one, if you're interested, form a goal. Rather than saying, yeah, I'm interested, maybe I'll buy some stuff, that kind of, the more well-defined your intention is in terms of a dollar amount or a specific number of products that you want to source, the higher chance you're going to have of success, because it's going to allow you to focus. So say you want to set a goal of, hey, we're going to set aside $500 of our produce budget this year to buy locally, or $100, or 2% of our budget, or whatever it is, something that's small and manageable and gives you a chance for success. Start with a goal. The second step then would be to locate a farm or farms to work with. And this can be daunting on your own. I don't know any farms. How can I possibly do that? I'm busy. I have not a clue how to locate somebody. So use some resources. Don't try to do this on your own. Use resources like the staff, the organizers of this institute. Any of them can point you to farms that can get started with you. Buy Fresh, Buy Local from University of Nebraska has resources to help. You can certainly talk to me. I love to talk to schools, and this isn't a commercial for my farm, but I would love to see if we're a good fit. And if I can't help you, I can likely point you to other farms who could. And obviously this is going to depend on the type of items that you're looking for. I do produce, so if you're looking for beef, I'm probably not a good fit. But anyway, reach out to the resources available to you and get pointed in the right direction. Don't try and do it on your own. And then the third step would be to, once you have a farmer or farmers that you're working with, sit down and then match that up to your budget and sit with them and say, hey, here's my target. What can we do together to achieve that? And the farmer is going to be able to, for instance, I would be able to tell you, here's the months of the year in which you can expect different produce items when they're going to be ready. Here's my target price, and so let's form a plan. Now you have an idea of how to plan your menus because you know when stuff is going to be ready. I have an idea of when to plant and how much area to reserve for what you need. So that helps both of us cement in that goal and help achieve success. So those are 3 steps: form a goal, locate a farm or farms, and then form a plan with them. And I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm kind of out of time. It's been great chatting. I love the idea of this institute, really excited to be a part of it, and hope to talk to many of you. So have a great day.
It was nice to hear the birds chirping in the background there. It was almost like we were there, Gary.
Well, it was, and that was back in May, so obviously things are a little bit different now.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump into some Q&A to just dig a little deeper into Gary's relationship with schools. So can we, and I'll start by asking a few questions, and then folks, please type into the chat, or we'll also have a chance for you to hop off mute and ask questions. But Gary, can you just kind of share with us, when did you first start selling to schools, and what were those initial steps like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's been 5 or 6 years. My first season growing was in 2015, so this is the 7th season. But I think it was in 2016 that I attended a farm to school summit in Nebraska, in a town. And Sarah, you may have been there too. I'm not sure who all was there, but we had an opportunity of a breakout session to meet with schools, and I just happened to meet someone from a high school in Lincoln, and she was interested in sourcing locally, and I was interested in producing locally. So we kind of just chatted, and she became my first customer. And then it was just kind of, I contacted a few other schools, and word of mouth kind of through her and through that high school and others, word of mouth. Sometimes schools reached out to me. So it was just kind of this organic word of mouth networking thing. And somehow that kind of became my niche that, oh, talk to Gary, he kind of does some farm to school stuff. So it kind of grew from there. Like I said, I'm growing on 1 acre, so it's small scale still. I'm considered a small scale operation, and I'm not going to be able to, even though I've had conversations with large districts like Lincoln Public Schools, there's no way that by myself I'm going to be able to supply something for a school system that needs 28,000 kids fed per day. So so the schools I tend to work with are smaller private parochial schools, and but conversations are happening, and hopefully the momentum just keeps building.
Do you remember kind of what those first sales or trial runs, like, can you describe maybe that process?
It's pretty straightforward in terms of the logistics and the procedure. I mean, to me, it was basically another sales channel. And so if I'm harvesting, I keep it pretty simple in terms of my ordering system. I'll send out a weekly Google form to customers on an email list, and that would include the schools along with some other wholesale customers. And so I send out a weekly Google form. They can view it. It has every product I've listed with a picture and a price and a quantity, estimated quantity that's available. And so they'll submit their orders and they come into me, and then it goes through a weekly cycle where I'll collect the orders by Monday morning. And then Monday during the day, I'm harvesting those orders. And then Tuesday morning, I deliver. So it's a pretty short cycle. I think I usually send out the order form on the prior Wednesday. So they have a few days to look it over. But I ask then the orders are due by Monday morning, and then Tuesday morning is I'm delivering to those schools. So.
And when you're selling to the schools, let's say Pius X, who are you specifically working with at the school?
Typically, it's the food service director. And so, we have if it's a new school, I like to go to the school at some point, just sit down in a short meeting, have a face-to-face introduction and say, hey, nice to meet you. Here's kind of, my products. I'll bring a list of products and, with rough idea of what months those products are available, and I'll have my price sheet, things like that. But it's a very informal process really at the scale I'm at, and so it's all about one-on-one relationships with the food service directors, so we know each other on a first name basis. And if they need to make a change to an order, or I run into a problem with something one week and don't have it available, then it's been a pretty flexible working arrangement.
Now, do you connect with the food service director or directors over the winter as you're planning your kind of what you're going to grow for the coming season?
I try to, and that's probably something that I still want to get better at. The ones that I do work with, they kind of know that because of the timing of the school year versus the growing season here in Nebraska, it's not likely that I'll have too much stuff available in the spring, because by that time, April and May, school's already starting to wind up. So the summer, but I have had conversations with schools, in the fall about, hey, looking forward to next calendar year, what are some things that we want to target together? And so I guess, yes, I have had those conversations.
Okay. But you may want to deepen them in the future.
Right, make it a little bit more concrete.
Okay, so I know you need to sell to I know you're selling to wholesale customers and school customers. Do you have to make any adjustments on your farm in terms of production or packaging or delivery times or process to meet the needs of the school customers compared to other customers?
No, not really, because again, the scale I'm at, you know, I'm using the same type of packaging for a grocery store or a restaurant that I would be for a school, and there isn't any real issues around, like, if you're talking about a really large operation where they're doing $500,000 a year, then you're getting into like food safety audits and Food Safety Modernization Act and everything. That really doesn't apply at my scale. So again, you know, I can kind of treat schools in the quantities that they're ordering just as basically another wholesale customer.
All right, I'm going to move over to the chats, the questions that are coming in the chat. Jan says this is helpful. Jan's from North Dakota, by the way. One question, do they know what they're getting before delivery? When using a Google form, it doesn't account for inventory compared to orders placed. How do they know what they're getting or not getting?
Right, so that's a fair question, and you're right. A Google form is not sophisticated enough to track inventory quantities. So if I say, I'm sorry, my video some magically just disappears sometimes on Zoom. I don't know why. So for example, if I say I have 200 pounds of potatoes available, and every wholesale customer would order 200 pounds, obviously I would be in a bind. So it's a little bit of me knowing what's typical quantities that customers have ordered in the past or schools have ordered in the past, and then I can kind of present my inventory accordingly. And usually it works out. It's just kind of me sort of mentally juggling those quantities against what I know I might be getting for orders. So far, and sometimes I will have to go back to a customer and say, hey, kind of oversold this week, I don't have that for you. And they're pretty understanding. If I get larger and it becomes more streamlined, I don't want to leave a school or frankly any customer in the lurch of like, hey, I ordered this, I was counting on you. What can we do to improve this? Obviously, we're going to have to address that at some point when that starts to become an issue. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, and Jan, feel free to chime in if you need more info, but I think this kind of pertains to module 4 of our training that we've been learning about here, Gary, where there's a calculus to be made about investments and scaling up potentially to reach profitability, but also to access perhaps more school markets. So investing in software platforms are something that could even be discussed as part of our farm to school producer training for folks who are in your position scaling up potentially.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but I'll just add to that too. Like, for example, on the other side, on the retail side, I do offer pre-order. So I normally retail, my biggest channel is through Sunday farmers markets, not necessarily just Sunday, but farmers markets. But during COVID, I started and have continued offering pre-order retail on a website. And so I use Squarespace, which is serves my purposes very well. There's lots of other options, but so that from an inventory perspective, I can put in exactly, hey, I have 20 bunches of kale available this week, and then I know I'm not overselling. So when you're talking about a larger number of small individual customers, that would become a problem if I was overselling and couldn't manage that well. You would start to have customers just silently disappearing. So there, I know that if I list 20 bunches of kale, I'm going to subtract that off of what I'm putting on my Google form.
Mhm,
So if
mhm,
I know
right.
maybe I have 40 bunches of kale that week, I'm going to list 20 as available for my wholesale customers and 20 on my retail site. I've considered doing, I'm still searching for a good wholesale site, because all of
Okay.
the websites out there are typically for e-commerce, are typically geared towards retail. And so you don't
Mhm.
have things like, invoicing, you don't have things, other things that you need to deal successfully with your wholesale customers. So I'm still sort of searching for that, but honestly, my experience with wholesale customers like restaurants, schools, things like that, is that since it is such a one-on-one relationship, and they're very busy, I don't want to give them a heavyweight system that they have to navigate through, and they just say, hey, give me all the Brussels sprouts you have this week. I'll take, so for that, they just want a simple email that comes to them. They can fill out the Google form and they're done. They don't have to navigate, log into a system, do anything like that. So there's some advantages to keeping it really simple, even though,
Yeah.
as I said, yeah, there's a danger of overselling.
Right. Well, and a lot of the folks on the line here today are from states like Nebraska, where, well, quite frankly, are even more rural than the Lincoln area, and we know that there are a lot of rural communities in Nebraska. But one of the questions is sort of, how do we make farm to school work in these smaller rural areas where, yeah, perhaps a email conversation or Google form is good enough for that relationship between the farm and the school.
Right. And not only good enough, I'd go further and say preferable, because
Preferable, yeah.
it's all about one-on-one relationships. And it's,
Right.
yeah, if you get into a big metro area or something, then maybe you need more heavyweight systems, because you have more, I don't know, more bureaucracy, if you want to use that word, and more red tape and more procedures that have to be followed. And I'm sure if I started selling into a big system like Lincoln Public Schools, I would have to kind of become a little bit more rigid and controlled in what I do. But for the time being, and especially if you're in rural areas or less populated areas, don't go over engineering a solution. Just start somewhere, and that really depends on building that trust, one person at a time. That is so much more important than any kind of system or process you have to implement. Those can be done later.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Sometimes we try and over engineer. We try and get a map of all the farmers and have people go on a portal and find, and it's like, to some degree, to some degree, there's no substitute for making those direct connections. Right. I'm going to try and get through some other questions we have here.
Yeah.
Does your order process limit your capacity? One person can only do so much as far as taking orders, packing orders, delivery. And do you have plans to grow or change the process in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're absolutely right. I can only do so much. And sometimes I feel like I am kind of at capacity. Now, as I mentioned, I did bring on a part-time person, about 5 to 10 hours a week this season and the year prior. So that helps some, but of course, when you bring labor costs into the picture, then that changes your finances. And so, you have to be careful about it. It's the same problem that any business faces. How do you grow at a sustainable rate that's not going to overwhelm you and going to let you grow, as opposed to just sort of collapse under the weight of too many costs. So I have never really had a goal to become giant. So I don't want to be a supplier that's big enough to serve 28,000 meals a day. What I would much rather do is keep myself at a scale that I like, and then work with groups like Sarah Smith at Nebraska Department of Ed, or Ben at UNL Extension, or Margaret at Buy Fresh, Buy Local, and grow a network of similarly sized farms that together can pool their product and do that. And there are a couple of grassroots sort of distributorships, if you want to call them that have come into being in Nebraska. One of them is Lone Tree Foods. Margaret has worked with them. so Lone Tree Foods is basically that. They aggregate supply from different farms, and they're not really, they focus more on restaurant and grocery store aspects. But you know, if they get into the school system, then maybe I would start selling through them as well. So you have to be careful about losing branding when you start dealing with, you know, co-ops and distributors. But if we can, you know, keep that in mind, then that would be an avenue. But for myself, it's just not my goal to become so big that all I'm doing is managing employees and delivery trucks. That's not what I'm interested in.
Thank you. And I hope everyone heard there, Gary is concerned about if he's selling through a food hub or a cooperative, of how his kind of brand identity will be passed through to a school. And that's I think sometimes we're quick to jump to, hey, have the school buy from a food hub, log on to this portal. And I think Gary has a real concern that he just shared there that all of us on the call should certainly be aware of. Okay, Gary, what is the mileage radius that you travel to school districts? And this is from Amy from Kansas.
Mm-hmm. So I keep it pretty local. I'm fortunate that Lincoln is a pretty sizable population center, at least for the scale I'm at. So I would say maybe 30 miles. I mean, I'm 15 miles north of Lincoln. My furthest wholesale customer is 15 miles south of Lincoln. And then most of the drop-offs are in Lincoln, and certainly all the schools are. So yeah, it's pretty tight. That's not set in stone. It's just what my current radius is.
Okay. This is a question from Dilly Spice Girl, AKA Barb Depew from Kansas. What are the most popular produce items that you sell to schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I find what schools really want most for vegetables are salad bar items. And unfortunately, I'm facing some ever increasing deer pressure that makes it really hard for me to grow lettuce or beets or any kind of, you know, greens like that. So that's a struggle for me. But what schools really, the times when I've been able to offer like baby leaf lettuce, that's snapped up right away. Cherry tomatoes were a popular seller this year. I had one school that was just regularly buying, you know, for example, 3 cases of cherry tomatoes every week. And so I could kind of count on that. Cucumbers are really popular. And because they can be easily sliced up and served on salads, which kind of touches on another issue, is that part of the success here is finding schools that have the capacity to do scratch cooking or processing. And not all schools, especially schools in like a larger school district, not all kitchens are equipped for that. They're more equipped for like heat and serve type things. So, but I'd say cherry tomatoes, salad mix, cucumbers. I do sell quite a bit of potatoes. Those are something that can be, that schools I deal with can process. Things that are maybe not so popular are things like onions, because those are available as so cheap in such quantities and already diced up and everything that it's just not economical for a school to try and deal with a case of onions that they have to process. So things that, you know, butternut squash, that it's already cubed, that kind of thing. Those are some maybe more difficult ones, but it's the fresh stuff that they kind of gravitate towards, I guess you could characterize.
All right, this is a question from Bob Ross, AKA Jess Wright from
Love Bob Ross.
Colorado. I love it. Thanks for the costume. Do you have order limits or minimum quantity requirements, or do you charge a delivery fee?
At this point, I don't have any minimum. I would rather kind of establish a good working relationship with the school than, you know, cut them off because of some minimum requirement. Again, that really directly relates to the scale I'm at. So for example, I mean, there's sometimes when I'm probably losing money. I've had schools order maybe 2 bunches of radishes. I don't know why they would want just 2 bunches, but I dropped it off, and you know, I want that to preserve that relationship. mean, if that became chronic and I was every week running around dropping off onesie twosies here and there, I might have to revise my policies. Now, having said that, I will say that I do charge a delivery fee for my retail orders and for exactly that reason. If a customer orders something online from me retail and doesn't want to come to the farmer's market where I am to pick it up, I do charge a $5 home delivery fee. And it's for exactly that reason, because I can't be onesie-twosying little orders all over town without trying to recapture some of that fuel cost and time.
Realized I skipped one from Deb from North Dakota. And I think she's kind of asking if you could respond to this on behalf of you and perhaps your farmer friends. If let's say let's say Deb did a producer training for you or live webinars, would it be better to have them at night?
I guess I'm not sure why one would be better than, are you talking about maybe like work schedules are less impacted or?
Yes, like when it's not daylight time.
Gotcha. That's possible. It would really depend on the producer. I mean, I have some flexibility in my schedule, and if I know that there's a webinar coming up and it's on maybe a non-harvest day or something, I can usually work around that. So I'm not sure there's a cut and dried answer for that. It really depends on the producers involved.
Thank you. Margaret from Nebraska is sorry if she missed this, but what is your approximate breakdown of your different markets? What percentage of your sales come from schools, farmers markets, and wholesale customers? And I don't think you missed this, Margaret. So thanks for your question.
That's a question I should know, right? I was just kind of looking at a year-to-date sales report this morning from my bookkeeping. Farmers markets are definitely the bulk of my sales. Percentage-wise, I'll take a stab and say, let's say 60 to 70%. And then the schools and wholesales would be kind of wholesale maybe, so that what leaves 40%, let's say, between wholesale and schools. Right now, schools maybe make up 15% of that, and the wholesale would be 25. So, boy, that's a real stab in the dark. But 60, so schools 15, farmers markets 60, and wholesale 25.
The last question I'm seeing here is, have you been a part of any educational opportunities for the students in classroom, cafeteria, or on farm?
Yes, that's a good and important thing to consider. I would like to do more, but we have done some school visits. We've also, I did host a farm tour in the past for food service directors. So I brought them out during the summer when school was out of session and brought them to the farm just so they could see what's going on and that. And, we rented a couple vans and carted everybody out there. That was fun. As far as students, I have visited classrooms or done presentations in schools. I would like to do more of that, but I have done some of that. Actually, just yesterday, I was on site at the cafeteria at the high school, one of the high schools here in Lincoln, and we did a farm to school visit. And, I had a little quiz set out for the kids, and between lunch periods, as they were changing lunch periods, they could stop by and do a little quiz and, drop their answers in a bucket for some little prizes and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. Love to do more of that. I had some UNL students who came out. This is not high school, obviously, but they're UNL students. They came out for a day to see for a half a day to see what was going on at the farm. I had them help transplant some things. They had a lot of fun with that. So here and there, yeah, but definitely would love to do more of that. I think the issue is just sort of time and logistics of getting students out to the farm and permission slips signed and all that kind of stuff. So.
All right, I want to have, I'm looking and I don't think there are any questions coming in. But if folks have a last burning question, please feel free. I want to wrap up with a question, and that is kind of, Gary, in an ideal world, what can you describe a relationship between a school and a farm?
Right, yeah, that thanks for asking that. I'll preface that by starting with what I do today. So what I do today, the way it kind of works is, as I said, I send out a weekly email of here's what I've got, here's the price, quantity, tell me what you want. That's a little bit sort of just opportunistic, I guess. And I just kind of show up. I kind of think of it like a farmer's market. You know, you just kind of show up with what was good that week and you hope for the best. Well, I'd like it to be a little bit more deliberate on both sides of the equation. And so I would like it to be that, you know, we have a better plan. I kind of touched on this in that video that you guys saw, the 3 steps is have a plan with some definite goals in mind. And this would be like on the school side, hey, I want to source 20 pounds of carrots every week that they're available. And then I would, knowing that they're sort of at least verbally committing to that purchase, then I would deliberately structure my crop plan that year to have a sort of reserved section of the field that this is for producing 20 pounds of carrots a week, and succession planning, whatever it takes to achieve that. I would like it to be a little more deliberate. The reason I would like that is because for the schools, they have now a little bit better commitment or idea of what is coming in for their menu planning, rather than just seeing, oh, what's Gary got on the menu this week, you know? And I, on the other side of the coin, know now I have a set demand that I know I can meet, and I know that I have, you know, that revenue I can kind of build into my budget. So the difference to me, if you want to flip back to the farmer's market model, the difference to me is the same as a farmer's market versus a CSA. Farmer's market, I'm just showing up with whatever I've got, and that's great for certain applications. A CSA, though, I'm pre-selling that stuff every week, you know, and the customers have committed to that. I'd like to see that similar kind of thing in a wholesale setting for the schools. And, you know, I've had numerous conversations with, you know, the Nebraska people on the team on this call today and stuff about, you know, how can we make that happen? And, you know, they've got some great ideas, and it's evolving, but, you know, we just need to get there. So.
Yeah, thank you for leaving us with that dream world scenario. And I would say don't kind of brush off Lincoln Public Schools because of your size. I mean, I know I used to work for a large school district, and we bought jalapeno peppers for dicing on our taco bar from extremely small growers, because you don't need a whole lot of jalapeno peppers to make a garnish for a taco bar. So, you know, and I think that's one of the things that I forget which module exactly it was that we have talked about, is the different applications that schools, you're in a salad bar kind of application here, but, you know, different sizes of and quantities of products can be used,
right,
or employed in different ways.
No, that's a great point. And you know, in having the conversations with like LPS, you know, it isn't an all or nothing thing, like you say, because there's like, okay, so you can't supply 28,000 meals, but can you supply something for these few high schools or whatever?
Oh, sure. That's another way. Exactly.
You know, segment it up like, okay, let's not, you know, try and solve the whole problem here. What can we do, you know, bit at a time? So yeah,
that's a good point.
That's a great point, Andrea.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. I think I can speak for everyone on the call that it was just great to get a chance to dig in and hear more about your program and hear some of your wisdom. I think folks on the call here, there are a lot of small farmers and small communities that are trying to make this happen, and hearing your story is just really helpful in seeing how it can look and maybe how it could look in the future.
Yeah.
I hope you're seeing the love coming in the chat.
No, I'm sorry I don't have a costume. I'm so bad at thinking of those things. I just
you're dressed as a farmer. I mean, it's perfect.
That doesn't count. That's too obvious.
Cool. Well, if you don't mind, Gary, maybe you could put your email or something like that in the chat. Folks, if they have more questions, could follow up. Thanks again for your time. Have a great restful winter, and I'm going to turn it back to Tammy.
Yes, thanks for sharing your time and your expertise, and it really helped to tie together a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about over the last 3 days. So yeah, I just was hearing a lot of the points that we were trying to cover in our curriculum. So yes, thank you for being spot on with all of that stuff. Yeah, and so we're actually going to move into a 15-minute break here.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are going to jump into our next section, but before we do that, we did want to update you on how you are going to get your costume points. So we know everyone's concerned about it. But what we'd like is for each group, if the facilitator could message in the chat and let us know what proportion or percent of folks you have here on your team who have a costume. So if you've got 7 folks on your team from your state and 5 of those people are in costume, send us a 5 out of 7. And then you'll get points by percentage. So if 100% of your team is dressed up, you'll get 4 points. If 75% is dressed up, you'll get 3 points, 50%, 2 points, and a quarter a point for your team. So if you can't tell, and I feel like people have had to share their costumes. So, I mean, we trust you, but we got to check it out. So please share that information in the chat box with us. If you need to do a check in our next breakout session, you can let us know after that too. But that is how you'll get your points. And thanks for dressing up. It's amazing. So that brings us to an important part of this work that we've kind of been alluding to over the past 3 days, but now we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, is evaluation of these workshops. And, this evaluation is really important for us to know how effective this training is. How is it helping producers? And also, how are we able to kind of continue to react and provide support and adjust to make it even more useful? So we're really happy to have our evaluation partner, Lydia Oberholzer, here with us. And I will just turn it over to you, Lydia.
Thank you, Lacey. As Lacey said, I'm Lydia Oberholzer. I've been involved in food systems evaluation and research for a couple decades, farm to school as well. I'm dressed here today in my Halloween costume as an evaluator because I didn't know that there was Halloween dress up. But as Lacey says, this is an important part of looking at the impact of the trainings on producers. I do want to start by letting you know that we had to develop the evaluation portion of the project before even the trainings were developed. We had to put it through OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. It's a really long process. So we kind of had to put the cart before the horse. And as a result, it was done before the pandemic. And so we understand that the protocols in place may not work exactly for your trainings, and we're happy to work with you. And so I wanted to put that out there first because we know it's an issue for many folks. You can go to the first slide. So there are 3 portions of the producer part of the evaluation. 2 out of 3 of them, we're hoping the facilitators of the trainings will take part in, and it really depends on whether you're in person or online, how that will happen. The first 2 are the ones that we hope trainers will help us with. There's a pre-survey at the beginning of the training. It's the longest of the 3 surveys. There's a post-survey at the end. It's fairly short, 5 to 10 minutes. And then there's a follow-up survey that we, Carolyn Dimitri, who's my colleague, and I will be responsible for. We'll be sending emails to the producers who take part in the facilitations after that. You can go to the next one, I think. So just to give you some background as to, trying to get rid of the chat function, give you some background as to the survey contents. The pre-survey includes farm demographics, so size of the farm, products produced, years farming. We also want to look at participation in farm to school sales and how that might change because of the trainings. So it could be either direct farm to schools or intermediate farm to school through intermediaries. And we'll start that out in the pre-survey, asking them at baseline, how involved they've been in farm to school. And then at the follow-up survey, like 6 months or a year later, give them some time to do that. The rating of knowledge regarding farm to school topics, that's self-reported, of course, and their confidence in marketing new schools. We want to look at that at the pre and the post survey, so right during the trainings. And then feedback on the trainings that we hope would be useful to you and to us. And that would take part at the post survey only at the end of the trainings. You can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of overview of how that will work in the training itself. We have a protocol that's pretty specific as to what you say and all the parts of the pre-survey and post-survey. But I did want to show you a little bit of this. This is the introduction slide, and it 2 slides, slide 3 and 4, provide instructions for conducting the pre-survey at the beginning of the training. If you have the training in person, what we'll do is we'll send you a packet. Mara will introduce herself and tell you a little bit about that, but we'll send you a packet of materials and you'll have a paper survey there. If you're virtual, you'll be doing it online. You can see the link there. The pre-survey includes an informed consent form, which probably a lot of you understand what an informed consent form is. And that goes in front of the pre-survey. Folks will be asked to read through the informed consent form, sign it before participating in the pre-survey. Some of the things we want to make sure that you get across, and again, will be in the protocol, is that participation in the evaluation is voluntary. We hope that they'll take part, but it is voluntary. And they don't need to answer any questions they don't want to. Even if they take the full survey, they don't have to fill out the whole survey. For in-person surveys, they would fold their consent form and survey and return them to you. We'll have an envelope for them to come back to us. For the virtual surveys, it's pretty simple, submitting the survey online. To the next slide, please. Very similar to the pre-survey, the post-survey will either be done in paper if the training's in person, or virtually if it's a virtual training. This is conclusion slide deck number 12. And that's the screenshot from that. Again, there's a link to it if you're virtual. And at the end of this, you could also remind them that in 6 months to a year, they'll also get an online survey. They probably won't remember that part, but we'll be bugging them about the follow-up survey for the training. You can go to the next slide. Just some final notes I want to go over. I want to remind you to stay in touch with NCAT and NFSN as you develop your workshops. We need to be in touch with you. Mara will be our link from NCAT for that. just so that we know that you're going to get the packets or have the protocol that you need to take part in the evaluation, that we work through any steps or issues you might have. We also know, as I mentioned before, that some folks are tweaking the way they're doing their workshops, and we'll have a list of different ways that you can participate in the evaluation. Say if you're just doing a day of a workshop or 2 of the modules. One question I get frequently is whether we are able to give responses back to the training facilitators, and yes, we are. Give it some time, a few weeks afterwards, but we're happy to provide you with the summary reporting out of SurveyMonkey of the answers to your surveys that have been de-identified in any way. And just a final reminder that you'll be getting a survey probably in your inbox any minute now. That's a follow-up survey to this training. And I'm hoping you'll take part in it. I know both NCAT and National Farm to School Network use these results, and they're really important to us. So we're hoping that you'll take 15 minutes to take that survey. Also includes a very long consent form for you to read. So that's my part. Mara, did you want to go ahead and give your background before we go to questions? Is Mara on? Okay.
Sorry, I started my video but didn't unmute myself. Thanks, Lydia. Hi, everyone. I'm Mara Hen. I work at NCAT as a community food system specialist, and I've also been participating this week with the Montana team. I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. As Lydia mentioned, I'll be that link between the evaluators and the project leads for the trainings. So I'll be reaching out to you as you begin to plan these and just kind of help iron out the details of when your trainings will be, if they'll be virtual or in person, to help coordinate the delivery of those evaluation materials. So just wanted to say hello, so you're not wondering who this person is when they reach out to you. And yeah, I just look forward to helping you all, and enjoyed dressing up with you all today and listening to awesome music. So, and yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks, Lydia.
So someone asked if I have, do you take evaluation contracts for other projects? Yeah, feel free to contact me or anyone else. We'd be happy to talk to you. Anyone have any questions about the survey, the surveys? Lacey, thank you.
Lydia,
I worked with the National Farm to School Network before this, so they know me. Go ahead, Andrea, sorry.
I hope you get some business here from the call, but I have a question that I'm sort of wondering if others may have, because I've been hearing a lot of folks' interest in splitting up the training, right? So doing different modules at different times, different modules for different audiences, you know, this module as an add-on to this conference. How might that intersect with your pre and post survey model, whereby, you know, a farmer may not be getting all of the information at once or getting all of the information, period?
Yeah, so we're going to have that laid out for you as well. If they're taking, we've changed the post survey so that we know which modules they're taking part in. Either they took part of all of them, or they've taken part in certain modules. So that, I mean, we know that there's probably going to be some stuff that you can't use on the pre and the post survey because of that. So we'll be able to tease that out. And hopefully you guys will be able to tease it out when you get your own results. But we will have a question at the very beginning about what modules they took part in. So we'll know that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I wanted to also just plug that I put this in the chat that we created kind of this state update form. It's only will take less than 5 minutes to fill out, but that's our important link to understanding when you're going to be doing your trainings and enable us to send you all this evaluation stuff and also enable us to kind of reach out and just check in and see if you need any help as you start to plan your training. So we'll be sending this out again, but this is the first one. This is the first reminder because I know you all quite aren't there yet, but just wanted to plug the form. This is the first link you'll receive.
Thank you.
Oh, and Andrea's offering some help about that. Yay, thank you, Andrea.
Right. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate the time that you all put into this and into the evaluation when we get there, and really appreciate everything. Thank you for
so
having me.
much. Thank you,
Okay.
Lydia.
Happy
Much
Halloween.
appreciated. Happy Halloween to you.
Okay, bye.
Great. Well, and as Lydia mentioned, we will be asking you all to complete a survey as well. We'll have some time actually at the end of today for you to complete that in real time because we really want your feedback. As Lydia mentioned, we do use it to make these training and workshops more effective and helpful. So really appreciate your feedback. Now, though, I am going to turn it over to Tomas as we jump into our planning and outreach guide.
Great, thanks, Lacey. Yeah, so I'm going to jump into our last presentation that we have for you all. Give me one moment. Oh, great, thank you. All righty, so yeah, last presentation of the workshop, technically, and congrats, you made it to the end of the tunnel. We're going to be talking about the planning and outreach guide and just generally around planning and promoting your trainings with a guide that was created by Anna Mullen, which is a NFSN's communications director, along with some support from NCAT. So just for some context setting, throughout the week, you've been learning about training content, you've been meeting with your state teams, and hopefully you've been brainstorming just how you might be approaching and putting this training into practice for local producers within your area. So this last session is really going to serve as kind of the structural support that you can use for event planning and outreach for that training, as well as just other sort of behind the scenes sort of things that go along and are involved in putting together any kind of conference or event. So next slide, please. So we have about 45 minutes for this session, but the majority of it is really going to be spent with your state group. So I'll only be talking for about 10 minutes, if that. But so just, for you all know, this is the last session, and you're going to want to start really thinking about what the creation of a local producer training would look like. Before we do that, just wanted to ensure that you all have access to the planning and outreach guide. You should have it within the packets that were available to you, but I'm going to go ahead and ensure that you have one accessible digitally. So here you are, it's in the chat for you there. And yeah, we'll be reviewing the key components within this guide, and I'm going to set you up with an activity to kind of help you and guide you through accessing and navigating the planning and outreach guide as well. Next slide. So at this time, pull up the guide, and you should have access to it digitally as well. The intention of this tool is to really provide you with a checklist of how to plan a training from start to finish, and to provide you with the tools and templates to make this a really easy lift. So I want to note that this guide interacts with the facilitator's guide quite a bit. So you should notice that these two tools are really designed to be worked with together. And we designed this guide to also recognize that you all are the professionals, and you have the expertise of understanding how a training would be conducted within your area. So just want to put that out there before we go into it. But with that said, this guide is really kind of a roadmap that you can use as you will. It's designed not to replace your expertise, but really to help your work get done faster. So we just wanted to give you that setting, and that's that's going to be kind of universal with all of the tools that we're giving you, is that you are really the expert here. So, but with that, jumping into it, the core of this guide is really a giant checklist. And maybe next slide. Yeah, there we go. The core of this guide is a checklist, and we've designed it to give flow to any kind of planning processes that will go into creating this training event for you. So you can literally start at the beginning of the work and work your way straight to the end to have a successful training, or you can start at any other point that's outlined there for you. So this checklist, however, it really doesn't know the specifics or the details of what would go into a local producer training for you. So you will need to read through it just to make sure that the decisions and any kind of adjustments are made for your local situation. So this tool really needs your localization to work best. The guide versus the rule book and localizing the content part of this is that, we want you to all, we've been using the word guide a lot. And, with that, we want to ensure that you are really not relying on the guide as gospel. It's really going to involve your expertise and your personalization and localization to really function. A few other things that are worth pointing out is that, we've created an online version of this document as well, which is fully hyperlinked. And for this tool, for the digital tool, it may actually work better than some of the hard copies that we provided, because it's meant to be interactive in that kind of a way. So if you're accessing it digitally, you'll see that the purple links will take you quickly through the digital versions of the document. The blue hyperlinks will send you to the editable versions of the templates. And at the bottom of every template, you'll see a blue hyperlink, which really will send you straight to the downloadable and editable Microsoft Office documents that you can use to customize to fit your specific needs. So the main focus of this session is, in a few minutes, we're going to be breaking out into the state training teams and starting to really start planning the local producer trainings. And just for a few moments, before we jump in to that breakout session, how about you all just spend some time familiarizing yourselves with the checklist, which is on page 3 of the toolkit, and scan the whole thing and really start thinking about how you can make that work as you start to plan the local producer training. So focus on the timeline and the flow of the planning. Does it match your capacity? Does it fit your needs as well? And then start thinking about how it could be customized as a tool that's going to really serve as a starting point for the localization process that's going to be needed to get this training off the ground within your area. Identify what gaps may exist within it and how to fill those gaps as well. Then the essential question of this is, how does this guide match up or mesh with ways that you're already approaching this type of work, or how this work has already been approached by other organizations or initiatives within the area as well. Next slide. So in your breakout sessions with your state teams, we want you to come up with the answers to 5 questions that that you'll then share back with us as a group later on. So be sure to appoint someone to maybe take notes and record your answers. But the questions will be labeled in your Jamboards as well, and you should be able to see them on the screen as well. And I'm going to actually also copy and paste them in the chat for you, so you have access to them there. But yeah, really keep these questions sort of at the top of your mind when you're approaching thinking about planning and outreach. So, why are you doing this training? Who needs to be on your planning team? Where and when is your training? Who is your producer audience? And then lastly, what sort of media outlets will be needed to carry the message that this training is available and open to producer audiences? So with that, we're going to go into our state teams now. Get the process started. And please reach out if you have any other questions. But yeah, happy brainstorming. Alrighty, great to have you all back. So moving on. First, I guess we should address the contest winners. And it seems like Wyoming won. So let's congratulate Wyoming. Excellent. So we'll be sending out a $25 Etsy gift card. There'll be electronic confirmation sent to the folks in the Wyoming group. So look out for those, and congratulations again. Yeah, so let's take a moment to just go around the group and just hear where you all are going to be going from here. What are the next steps in bringing the farm to school to local producers within your area? So I'm just going to go down a list, and if someone could just come off mute and share where your team's at right now, that'd be wonderful. All right, so I could start with Montana.
Hi everyone. We are ready to get going. We're really grateful that we have a USDA Farm to School grant that we had written into producer trainings that will be held in 2022. So currently planned for the spring and one in the fall. With our group that attended this training, we've been discussing our audience group since we have a really big state and a lot of different types of producers that have different kinds of needs. But right now we're thinking we'd like to invite all types of producers and then have breakout sessions that are specific to those different types of producers when the content needs to be divided up like that. Our team list is pretty good, and since we had it for the proposal, and we also added some folks on there, so we're excited about reaching out to them and bringing them on board, in particular for Module 4, which is a great module and a lot of information that our team doesn't necessarily have the expertise in currently, but we will have it all covered soon. And then we're thinking about different ways of outreach. And so we have a lot of different partners, possibilities for sending out press releases through different agencies and organizations that are participating. And one of the ideas is to partner with some of the ag stores, supply stores, as perhaps sponsors, but then also have them help with advertising by having posters or postcards in the stores. And also very grateful for this outreach guide that has pre-made things that just takes off a lot of time and effort. So that's really great. Yeah, and then I think one thing that's kind of tough for us is figuring out where are good locations, because again, we have a really big state, and it's kind of hard to pick a location that's convenient or just mutually inconvenient. So now that'll be a larger and longer discussion that we'll need to figure out, and try to plan around snowstorms and stuff like that. So yeah, we're excited.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, up next, Wyoming.
Well, it's going to be a tough call as I'm the only one here. So we talked about, we said this over and over, Wyoming, we have such a small group, of farm to school, that we are going to definitely look at some different aspects. We may not be able to actually do the training, but maybe partnering with some of the nearby states. Maybe, I know Leanne has some plans to take pieces of it to some of the meetings that they have, coalition meetings, different meetings like that kind of thing. We did talk about different things that we could do kind of in the interim, not that this may not be something that down the road we get to put together and do some trainings on, but right now is just really not the time with the labor shortages that we've got both on the farmer producer side and in the schools and, that kind of thing. So, like I said, maybe the partners with the other states I really am going to keep my ears out. It's really good information to have. So as I hear the need, I've got the information and we can help them with the resources. And then, like I said, maybe if we don't get to do the full trainings, if we have a small number of producers that want the trainings, we'll, talk to the other states. When do you have them going on? Or maybe if some of them do a hybrid where they do some virtual, they can be a part of that as well.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Next is Nebraska.
Oh. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Looking at the questions that you gave us, we worked on number one, why are you doing this training? So it was a really good conversation we just had. And we took the time to get to know each other and find out why we are at this table and what brought us into this field. So it was really interesting to just learn about values and hone ins. We talked about why this training is happening in our state, but then also why each of us as individuals are here. And so it was just really a great time. It was nice to learn more about the team. And we also acknowledge that, at least in our state, and I think I've heard this is true across the country at Farm to School Network conferences and that type of thing, that while there's been resources and tools for food service staff and maybe for school gardens and that type of thing, the tools and resources for avenues for producers to enter this market have been really thin and not existent. And I know that I felt when I've done trainings for producers about getting into school markets and the value of it, and for food service directors to buy local, there just haven't been a lot of resources to help make that happen. And we think this is a very dense curriculum and very valuable. So we will, like Aubrey said, be looking for where our gaps are for some of those very ag specific and technical pieces on those modules. And I think I shared out yesterday what our plans are for hosting the trainings and maybe doing the hybrid thing as well. So anyway, yeah, I think that's the Nebraska share out.
Great, thank you. North Dakota.
Well, we have a very excited team, but not a really fully fleshed out plan yet. So we still think we're going to stick with doing something in January for like a kickoff, and then with the local foods conference in February, and then some live webinars. And then, because our whole thing is we have, for 7 years, kicked this down the road waiting for the perfect thing. We can't wait. We're just going to actually do something. And then we might have to redo it, you know, but we've got a good team. There are always the same, we talk about that, same people get tapped all the time for this kind of thing, but we're still gonna pursue it and go ahead. We do think we need a couple producers on our team, and not to snatch them to be speakers, but to just give us a little more perspective as we're planning it, that we think of them instead of just us. We have had some really, really good conversations. I guess I feel like it's just been kind of this big all these years, but now I feel like we've gotten like this big, really big. Like everybody's very excited, even though they're busy, they're willing to at least attempt to get something done by January.
Thank you so much for sharing. And next we have Kansas.
Great. This is Caitlin Stanley from the Kansas Rail Center, and our team talked about how we're maybe not where we hoped we would be, but that we do have some events coming up in the spring here. So we're going to definitely introduce Farm to School more to audiences, get more schools invested, get more producers interested. So that way, when we have the training, there's actually an audience. So that's kind of how we focused our time to think how we can get more people invested in this and ready to participate when we're ready. So probably not doing the full training in the timeline that we expected, but maybe the intro and module 1, starting with a few events at both schools or with school professionals and with producers here in the spring.
Thank you. And up next, Missouri.
Hi, this is Lexi from Missouri, and our team, we're kind of in the same boat as Kansas. We're still in the very much planning stage, and what are those ways that we can reach our producers, and kind of we focus a lot on like why we're doing this training. We don't have a lot of producer trainings that cover any farm to school aspects. And then our next focus was where are we going to do these trainings, and kind of the same aspect. We think we're going to tag it on the introduction piece to our senior farmers market and WIC nutrition program, little bits of trainings that we already do. And maybe I can go and do just the intro section, kind of get people interested. And then maybe next year, springtime, be actually to hold our first one. We also talked about maybe doing like a pre-conference training or how to get into those conferences a little bit too.
Thank you. And up next, Colorado.
I was waiting to see if anyone else was going to jump in. I think they all thought we were on break till 2 though. For Colorado, you know, we have a lot going on with our team for these local procurement Colorado trainings that have been in the works for a while now, years at this point. So everything that we've been taking in and everything that we've been learning over the last few days is really helping us think about our curriculum, how we want to integrate what we've learned into what we've already developed. And we have a really scheduled rollout, but it's based on grant funding that is potentially coming in. So a lot of it is getting really excited and wanting to jump in and plan these really, really thoroughly, but also just kind of waiting for that funding piece to fall into place. Our state, like most of the states here, is really diverse by region. And so the type of producers that we can bring in and the individuals that we will engage have really specific needs based on if they're Denver, if they're rural, or if they're mountain. So we will continue to meet. We already meet almost monthly to discuss this training, and we are going to just kind of kick it into high gear with our first low Proco training in 2022 in January. And we will be incorporating CACFP and schools, our farm to school grants for both funded CDE and CDPHE and the low Proco training. So we have this really big force right now. And we're hoping to host these in a way that allows childcare centers to start talking to school districts about collaborative purchasing and just bringing it all together. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Great, thank you. And lastly, South Dakota.
Hi, yes, this is Anna Barr with SDSU Extension. And we are in that side of things where we are just getting things rolling, but have some momentum we're excited about. So our first steps are going to be reaching or looking, I think, for that funding opportunities, the grants and things that we could use to make this happen at a statewide level and really do it well. But also recognizing that we've got some producers who are really eager and have been asking for this type of information for a long time, and we haven't been able to provide it well. So looking at doing some sort of a pilot or a localized training for the first time, maybe this winter, and then starting with maybe more of that statewide into next fall and winter, when we have some other producer trainings that we could tack onto. So we'll be focusing on building our capacity, both with the relationships that we have and the funding that we could use towards this project.
Great. Thank you all for sharing, just kind of giving us a glimpse into just where you are at in the planning process now, and what's to look forward to in the future. So moving on, we want to apologize for the agenda snafu that we are going through right now, but as Tammy had mentioned, we're kind of in the final stretch of this. So we want to encourage you all to complete the workshop evaluations, which you should have received in your email by now, and think of ways to connect with us, NCAT and NFSN, and bringing to our attention any kind of advancements that you all are making in the planning process of this local training. And in doing so, we mentioned that you're not alone in this process, and we want to ensure that we're providing you with as much support as possible. So with that, we wanted to ensure that you were sharing any kind of request for technical assistance in your planning processes. So I'm going to give you all a link to a technical assistance menu that we have up now, and we've developed this technical assistance menu really just to assist you all with the starting of organizing your state producer trainings. And in addition to that, we'll be sending you all reminders, including technical assistance forms within the coming months. So feel free to reach out in the meantime with any kind of specific questions that you have, and then in the long term, utilize these tools, and as well as utilize our communication to keep us informed of what's planned next for your state producer trainings. On that note, we'll be providing you with some additional information related to just some of the webinars that were specifically around action planning and other things of that sort. So those will be included within a few other future emails that we'll be sending you all in the future. So on that note, we'd really like to just thank you all for the large amount of time that you've spent with us this week. It was a really big ask to spend 4 days with us, going over a lot of information that for some of you all may have been the very first time you're taking a look at farm to school in action, and the practices and the processes that go behind the scenes, that go along behind the scenes in farm to school implementations around the country. So we really want to just share our appreciation for you all in that. And in addition to that, we want to appreciate and thank our folks at the USDA, our teammates at New York University, of course, the folks at NCAT, and my team at NFSN for putting this conference together and sharing all of these moments and information with everyone here today. So thank you all. You all are.
Hey, Tomas, I see
yes.
Andrea has her hand up.
Oh yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say too, thank you so much, Tomas and Tammy and Carlos and the whole team for making this like the least painful multi-hour Zoom situation. I think I know I was really engaged. You really modeled some good practices to all of us for, keeping it mixing up, keeping the energy up, and allowing us to follow along in our little books. I gotta make one point that actually one of my other regional colleagues mentioned that's really been sticking with me. To some degree, we've created a training to try and help farmers navigate like a broken system, right? Like our school meal system is not super designed to make it easy for schools to buy from farms, and especially, you know, small farms, BIPOC farms. We're sort of like trying to sometimes fit a square peg into a round hole. This is a phenomenal training, but I think all of us working at the state level, working at the regional level, working at the national level, we still need to try and change the system, right? We still need to try and make it easier for farms to sell to schools, rather than putting the onus on farmers to try and navigate this crazy system, right? So I think we all, as we leave, I think need to commit to obviously taking this information into account, tailoring it, implementing it, training the farmers, but let's keep trying to change the systems in which they operate so that farm to school is the easy choice. And we don't have to have a training on how to specifically for farmers sell to schools. That's just the way it works. So thank you for letting me share that philosophizing, so to speak. And then let's kind of let that fire kind of burn under us as we go out and do the training and continue to do the good work that all of you are doing. So thanks again for dressing up, for being here, for all of the incredible ideas we've been hearing, and for, I'm excited to see where this all goes in the next couple months to couple years.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea, for that framing. And we definitely want to tap into just that energy and keep the momentum going, you know, as we move into just the next few months and the next few years. So thank you for your continued support throughout the last 4 days, and yeah, all of the insights that you've been able to provide us with.